Hey 20 bookers, how's it going? Matt here, and I just wanted to make another tutorial video for you guys because after I made my last video where I kind of walked you through the process of setting up an ad in the simplest way possible on Facebook, I got a lot of comments and direct messages from people in the group who wanted to know, okay, well, I've got my ad set up. How do I know if it's working or not? What's a good cost per click? What's a good click-through rate? How do I know how many books my ad is selling? And, stuff like that. And so I kind of thought that the next video I make should be to tell you guys how you should analyze the ad data from Facebook. If you're someone who's a creative person like we all are in this industry, numbers can kind of be intimidating sometimes. So when we set up an ad and we get the data from that ad, we can kind of go cross-eyed because we don't know how to read those numbers. We'd all be mathematicians and scientists if we were numbers people, or maybe accountants or something. I don't know. But the long story short is that most people, if they set up their Facebook advertising, they're not going to know, how to read the data properly. So in this tutorial today, what I plan to do is I plan to take you through the process of looking at your ad data and kind of deciphering what it all means and how, people who don't have any experience in this thing and who aren't numbers people can look at it and figure out what they need to do to improve their advertising. So we're going to hop on over to my computer and I'm going to take you guys through a little presentation, and then I'll show you a few things in my ad account. All right, everyone, so here we are at my computer, and I'm just going to put my glasses on so I can actually see what we're doing here. So what I'm calling this presentation or tutorial is basically analyzing your Facebook ad data for dummies. I'm not calling you guys dummies. I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm just saying that sometimes this stuff can look really complicated, and people just want it dumbed down for them. I'm very appreciative when people explain things to me like I'm a 3-year-old because it helps me to understand it. So the purpose of this tutorial is to do the exact same thing for the Facebook ad data. So we're going to go through this presentation where I kind of cover the big chunks of how to analyze your ad data, and then we're going to hop on into my Facebook ad account so I can show you guys, where all this data is hidden. All right, so basically we're going to talk about how to tell if your Facebook ads are working or not. So let's talk about how to read your data. When should you analyze your data? Now, this is a very important thing because a lot of people, they'll start an ad campaign and they'll let their ad run for maybe a couple hours and they're really excited to find out how it's doing. They'll log in, they'll look at the stats, and they won't have a whole lot of clicks, and they'll be like, oh, this ad isn't working, they'll shut it off. Basically, it's a rookie mistake. You need to have time to collect data in order to figure out, what's working and what isn't. So basically, we have this term in marketing called statistical significance. And what that means is that you need to allow your advertising to accrue enough data so that you can get a statistically significant result, which means that the statistics that your ad generates are going to, be as accurate as possible. Now, when it comes to Facebook advertising, I have a couple rules of thumb that I personally follow. This isn't based on any truly scientific advertising, there's no calculator that I use that says okay, by the time your ad hits these benchmarks, you have statistical significance. This is just stuff that in my years advertising online, I've kind of, developed and I use as a rule of thumb. So before you start taking your data seriously and believing that it'll actually tell you something worthwhile, you need to wait until you get a statistically significant sample of data. So what that means is, rule of thumb, if an ad gets 200 clicks, you can reasonably be assured that that's statistically significant enough to start analyzing the data. So if you have an ad with a lifetime, accumulation of at least 200 clicks, the data that ad has collected should be able to tell you something of value that isn't going to be affected by big swings in usage or clicks or whatever. So look for 200 clicks on an ad. If your ad isn't getting 200 clicks, by the time it's reached 5,000 impressions, you can usually rest assured that enough people have seen that ad to give you an idea of how they're going to respond to it. So for instance, if you have a bad ad and it's going to take you years to hit that 200 click mark, 5,000 impressions is kind of like the general rule of thumb for statistical significance in lieu of clicks. Now, let's say that your ad isn't getting a whole lot of impressions or clicks. In that case, a rule of thumb is to let your ad run for at least 7 days, because after an entire week of running on an ad platform, you can usually have a pretty good idea of how an ad is going to perform. So those are the rules of thumb for how long you should wait until you start analyzing your data. 200 ad clicks, 5,000 impressions of an ad being served, or 7 days of an ad running. So between those three things, you can rest assured that the data you'll be looking at is going to be statistically significant. All right, so let's talk about analyzing your cost per click. Now, basically, your first try at running an ad, it's probably going to have a higher cost per click than someone who's taken the time to refine their ad. I got a lot of people messaging me about, oh, my cost per click's really high. Is this bad? Like, how can I get this down? So, as a general rule of thumb, if you've just made up an ad and you started serving it, chances are your cost per click is going to start out high. But the good news is that you can do things to lower that. That's kind of like your baseline. Like if you start an ad and it's like serving at 60 cents per click, it can only go down from there if you do the right things to, optimize it. So basically, when you first run an ad, you can expect that your cost per click is going to be high. Now, what do we mean by high? I basically say that anything over 50 cents per click is high. Now, you could refine that to say anything over 30 cents per click is high. But I find that, in the typical auction atmosphere of these online ad platforms, most people won't bid like 40 cents or something like that. They'll always bump up their bid to 50 cents. So 50 cents is going to be the thing that kind of breaks that threshold into low to high. So like anything more, like if you're paying 60 cents a click, if you're paying 70 cents a click, 80 cents a click, $1 a click, that's high. Okay, now hopefully your ads aren't running that high when you first start out, but you can expect them to be between 40 and 60 probably. So if that's high, what is a good cost per click to aim for? Well, basically to start off with, I would say you want to aim for 30 cents a click and under. So if your ad is getting you clicks at around 30 cents, give or take, you're doing pretty good. It's a good start. Ideally, you'd want your ad to be getting cost per clicks at around 25 cents and under. So if you're paying $0.25 a click, that's basically pretty good. It's not prohibitively expensive, and it can be improved, but you're not breaking the bank at 25 cents a click. Now, ideally, the best price per click that you could aim for is 10 cents and under. So if you're paying 10 cents per click, you're doing really well. If you're paying even less than that, you're doing amazing. So for instance, some of my ad campaigns that I'm running right now, I'm clocking in at 3 cents a click, which is like next to nothing. So I'm able to get a whole lot of clicks at a very cheap cost, which, is ideal for anyone who's doing Facebook advertising. But, not everyone can hit that level. So just aim for 30 and below and just keep trying to lower that cost per click until you get it as low as you possibly can. But those are some, benchmarks for you to judge your campaigns based off of. So now the next question is, once you know what you're spending per click, how do you lower that cost? And basically, there's only two real ways that you can do that. The first is to optimize your ad, and the second is to refine your audience. Now, we'll get into how to do this later on in the presentation, but just know that there are ways to drop that cost per click. You're not stuck at paying a high price if that's what your ad starts off at. All right, so let's talk about analyzing your click-through rate, otherwise known as your CTR. So basically, your click-through rate is the metric which determines how much you'll end up paying per click. The higher your click-through rate is, the lower your cost per click is going to be. And the lower your click-through rate is, the higher your cost per click is going to be. So it's an inverse relationship, okay? If you're paying a very high price per click, chances are your ad is being served disproportionately to the amount of clicks you're getting from your audience. So just real quick, how do you figure out your click-through rate? For you people out there like me who hate math, this is super simple. Basically, you just take the number of clicks that you've gotten from an ad and you divide that by the number of impressions. So basically, if you have 1,000 impressions and you got 10 clicks, you divide 10 by 1,000, and that's your click-through rate, basically. Once you get that number, you just move the decimal point, over to the right, and that gives you your percentage, okay? So the higher your click-through rate is, that means the more effective your ad is. So a high click-through rate equates to an effective ad. A low click-through rate equates to an ad that isn't doing very well and needs to be improved. So the real question here that you might be asking is, what click-through rate should you be shooting for? So I'm going to give you like 3 benchmarks that you can judge your advertising by. 0 to 5% is a low click-through rate. So if your click-through rate for an ad is between 0 and 5%, it needs to be improved. Between 5% and 10% is average. So if you're in that range, your ad's doing pretty well. If you're over 10%, you're doing good. Okay, so if you're a real stickler like me who tries to get the lowest cost per click possible and get the most optimized ad possible, you're going to want to shoot for over 10% click-through rate. Okay, but you don't have to. All right, 5 to 10% is decent, but the higher the click-through rate, the better your ad is doing. All right, so what do you do if your click-through rate is low? Well, there are a couple reasons why your click-through rate might be, low in the 0 to 5% range. The first reason is that your ad isn't resonating with your audience, in which case you have a bad ad, okay? So the ad people are seeing just isn't interesting them enough to click on it. Now remember, your ad needs to be written in such a way to encourage people to click on it, not necessarily buy your book. One of the rookie mistakes that a lot of first-time advertisers make is they try to sell their book in the ad. That's not what the ad is for. The ad is to get them to the page where they can buy the book, and that's where they're usually sold on it. So your ad needs to be optimized to get people interested enough to just click on it. The second reason why your click-through rate may be low is that your audience isn't targeted enough, okay? What this means is that you might be targeting an audience that isn't interested in what you have to offer. So like, let's say you're selling a fantasy book, okay, high fantasy, swords and sorcery, that type of thing, and you target science fiction fans, okay? Now, science fiction and fantasy tend to go together. However, there is some disconnect there where there are some science fiction fans who aren't interested in high fantasy novels. So if you've targeted them together in an audience, what might be happening is that you're serving your ad to a lot of people in the science fiction interest group who aren't interested in fantasy. So you're getting a disproportionate amount of impressions being served and not enough clicks to warrant including that interest group in your audience. So ideally what you would want to do is you would want to separate the high fantasy interest group from the science fiction interest group and run separate ads to both of them, and just to see, how they're responding to your ad. Because if your audience isn't targeted enough or isn't properly targeted, what's going to happen is Facebook's going to start serving your ad, and these people aren't going to be clicking on it, and Facebook's going to charge you more to serve your ad to these people who still aren't clicking. Okay. The third third reason why your click-through rate may be low are that your placements are too broad. And what I mean by this is that one of the big rookie mistakes that a lot of Facebook advertisers make is they do automatic placements for their ads when they're setting up their ad group. So what this means is that their ads are showing up on Instagram, their ads are showing up on Messenger, their ads are showing up in the Facebook Audience Network, in addition to the right-hand column and instant articles and the news feed, okay? Now what this does is it gives your ad a very wide reach, and it's going to serve a lot of impressions, but it's also going to be extremely untargeted, even with your interest groups selected. So for instance, the Facebook Audience Network goes out to all the apps that people develop using the Facebook platform, who serve advertising on their apps. And that can really serve to jack up your impressions so high that that the number of clicks you get can never really catch up with it. So because of that, it lowers your click-through rate. So you want to make sure that your placements are a little bit more specific. And I said in my last video that I really only recommend targeting the Facebook news feed, because that's the only real placement that I have found that converts consistently and converts well. So make sure that your ads are only being served to the Facebook news feed and nowhere else. Go in and manually select your placements. The final reason why your click-through rate may be low is that your ad isn't being served enough, okay? So basically, like, let's say you go in there and you don't have a lot of money to spend on advertising, so you tell Facebook, I only want to spend like $5 a day. Now, $5 a day, it's not a lot of money for Facebook. You'll probably get, depending on your targeting, around 200 to 300 impressions per day, if that, off of $5. And that means that your ad isn't going to be served a whole lot. And when your ad isn't served a whole lot, its chances of getting clicked on are reduced. So what you might want to consider doing is to have a higher budget at the start of your ad for at least like a week, like maybe instead of $5 a day, $10 a day, just to make sure that your ad is getting served enough that people will click on it. And once you do that, you can scale back your spending. Basically, once Facebook's algorithm has figured out, okay, people will click on this ad, so we're going to keep serving it at this cost per click. Another issue with your ad not being served enough might be that your audience is too highly targeted. So when we're crafting our custom audience to serve our ads to in Facebook, we do like a lot of things that we want to kind of like zero in on the people that we think are going to buy our book. But if you do that too much, you might actually be cutting out a large swath of people that your ad can be served to. And so Facebook's just like, oh, we don't have enough people to give this ad to, which will lower your impressions, and chances are that's going to lower the number of clicks you get as well. So basically, you might have a bad ad, you might have a bad audience, you might have bad targeting, your bid might be too low, or your audience might be too highly targeted. Those are the big factors why your click-through rate might be lower than you want it to be. So now that we've talked about looking at your click-through rate and your cost per click, let's talk about the really important metric here, which is analyzing your conversion rate. Okay, so let's say that you've got an ad and you're getting good clicks, but you're not really seeing those number of clicks reflected in your Amazon sales reports or whatever bookstore you're sending people to. If you're getting lots of clicks but not seeing a significant increase in sales, chances are something's wrong with your landing page, which means that your ad is doing the job of delivering the traffic, but your landing page isn't doing the job of selling your book. And this could be indicative. We're all wordsmiths here. Indicative of a bad cover, like a cover that isn't resonating with your audience, or a bad blurb, or lack of reviews. There's a number of things that could be contributing to a low conversion rate. But typically the conversion rate is based off of the page that you're sending people to as opposed to your ad, because your ad is designed to get people to click and your conversion page is designed to get people to buy. Okay? So the low conversion rate means that those who click on your ad aren't buying your book. Now the question is, do you know your conversion rate? Chances are you don't, because most people don't even think about this type of stuff, or they don't know how to do it. So let's talk about how to figure out your conversion rate. And this is the most unscientific method of doing this possible, because Amazon, unfortunately, does not give us a way to track if our advertising is actually converting or not. So let's talk about how to get this metric in an unscientific fashion that won't give you the exact conversion number, but it will give you a general idea of how well your page is doing. And the reason I say this is unscientific is because sometimes your books will get organic sales from people who are surfing Amazon, from newsletters that go out from Amazon, from other things that you're doing to promote your book. Sales are going to come in. Okay. Ideally, if there was no other traffic going to your landing page, your book's product page on Amazon or whatever bookstore you're choosing to send traffic to, then you'll know for a fact that all those sales are coming from your ad traffic. Okay, but there's always going to be a slight deviation here, simply because there are going to be some organic sales coming in as opposed to all the sales coming from your ad, unless your book is like super unknown and you know for a fact that you're not making any sales without advertising. So in order to unscientifically figure out what your conversion rate is, you basically want to select a time frame, like let's say a week. Okay, a week, what we talked about before, statistical significance. 7 days should be enough to tell you whether or not something's working. So let's take a 7-day time frame and look at the number of book sales you've made in that time frame. Okay, so let's say within 7 days you made 10 sales. Okay, then you go and you look at the number of clicks that your ad got within that same time frame. So you go into Facebook, you choose the option to look at the last 7 days, and Facebook tells you, okay, you got 1,000 clicks over the course of 7 days. All right, so what you do is you take the number of book sales and you divide it by the number of clicks your ad got in that time frame, and then you move the decimal point 2 points to the right when you get that result, and that gives you your conversion percentage. Okay, so this is embarrassing because I'm terrible at math, but I'm just going to quickly look up my calculator here and do some math. So in this example, we had 10 sales divided by 1,000 clicks. So that equals 0.01. So if you move the decimal point over to the right 2 times, that gives you a 1% conversion rate. Okay. God, I should have known that. My grade school math teachers will be embarrassed by now. Okay, so if your conversion rate is low, that means that there's something wrong with your landing page. It's not your ad that is the culprit for not giving you sales. It's your landing page. So you need to start looking at ways to improve that. So what are good conversion rates for book sales? Well, rules of thumb, 0.5% to 1% is low. So if you're in that range or below that, you need to do something to improve stuff immediately. 2% to 4% is about average. Okay, so if you're at a 3% conversion rate, you're doing just fine. If you're over 5%, 5% or above, you're doing extremely well. Okay. Now, keep in mind that conversion rate differs based off of what your end goal is. When you're selling something, conversion rate tends to be in the single digit range usually, whether it's 0.5% or 9%. Okay, it's going to be lower. But if you're doing like opt-ins for a email list, you're going to see a higher conversion rate. Sometimes up between 30% and 60%. But when it comes to book sales, your conversion rate's going to be in those like low digit numbers. And these three metrics, I think, are good rules of thumb by which to judge this. Now, keep in mind, this is the unscientific method. It's not going to give you the precise conversion rate based off of, ad traffic, but it's going to give you a general idea of what's going on with your campaign. So if it's low, chances are, your landing page needs to be improved. If it's high, chances are your landing page is good. So this is just another way to analyze your campaign and know what's going on with it. All right, so let's talk about what you can do with this data. Now that you know about click-through rate, cost per click, and conversion rate, what you want to do is you want to take this stuff and start thinking about how you can improve your advertising. And there are two ways you can do this, okay? The first is to optimize your ad, and the second is to refine your audience, okay? So we're going to go through that right now. So let's talk about how to optimize your ad. The best way to optimize your ad to get more clicks so that you can lower your cost per click and raise your click-through rate is to split test all your ads components, okay? Facebook has this great feature now where it allows you to create split testing campaigns that gives you the opportunity to test up to 5 different variants of an ad, okay? So what you want to do is you want to break the ad down to all its separate components, which are the image, the ad text, the ad's headline, the article description, and the call to action button. Those are 5 things that you need to test, okay? Now, you want to test 5 variants of each aspect of your ad. So you want to test out 5 different images, you want to test out 5 different types of ad text, you want to test out 5 different headlines, 5 different article descriptions, and 5 different call to action buttons. Now, once you've done a full round of testing for your ad, you take all the winners of those different tests, so the best performing image, the best performing ad text, the best performing headline, the best performing article description, and the best performing call to action button, and you craft a whole new ad using all those winners. And that is how you optimize your ad, because once your optimized ad is being served, you know that each aspect, each component of that ad has been proven to resonate with your current audience, okay? And what you're going to see when you do that is you're going to see an increase in the number of clicks you get, and you're going to see a rise in your click-through rate and a lowering of your cost per click. Now, once you do this once, you can wash your hands of it and walk away, or you can continue to do new tests, do this all over again, and continue to optimize your ad until you're down to like the 3 cent per click range. And that's how I did this. I'm getting 3 cent clicks right now on some of my advertising. And the way I did that was by just doing a whole lot of split testing, finding out the stuff that my audience responded to the most strongly, and then putting it all in an ad. And now I've gotten to the point where my ad is so optimized that I'm getting dirt cheap clicks, and it works out really well. And this is how I did it. All right, so after you optimize your ad, or if your ad is already optimized and you're still getting some poor performance, what you want to do is you want to refine your audience a little bit more. And basically the way this works is that you want to eliminate people who aren't interested in your ad. You want to eliminate people who aren't likely to buy your book. You want to segment your demographics. And you want to test new audience targeting, okay? So we're just going to go through these 4 things real quick. Chances are when you first create a Facebook advertising campaign, you're going to get a lot of, different targeting going on there that you're not quite sure is ideal. And basically, when you're going through your Facebook ad account, you're going to want to look at all these different metrics and try to figure out, okay, who am I serving my ad to that is causing my ad to drive up in cost? Who's clicking on my ad, who's not buying, and things of that nature. And you want to slowly kind of weed those people out, or at least break them out into their own ad campaign, so that you have a more refined audience that's more likely to buy your book. Because the more you can refine your audience, the lower cost per click you'll have and the higher click-through rate you'll get, because your ad to audience matching is going to be higher. Now, one way you can do this is to segment your audiences by demographics. And what I mean by demographics are a person's gender and a person's age. So in Facebook, you can target male or female or both. And you can also target based off of age ranges. So age ranges 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and then 65 and over. Okay. Now, believe it or not, different genders and different age groups respond to different things. It's a novel concept, I know. But one of the things that I've made a habit of doing in my advertising campaigns is to have one ad campaign for each gender. So if I'm advertising my Earthman Jack books, I have an ad campaign that's targeted towards men only. None of my ads get served to women. Then I have a second campaign where my ads are served to women only. None of my ads are seen by men. And I test out different ads in those two campaigns to find out what each gender responds to best, because women respond to things differently than men do. That's just a fact of life. By the same token, age ranges play into this. So for instance, let's say that you write romance novels and you notice that the 18 to 24 range is getting you a disproportionate number of clicks than all the other age groups. Now, someone might look at that and say, well, 18 to 24-year-olds are my target audience because I'm getting so many clicks on this ad. But that's not necessarily the case, because 18 to 21-year-olds, okay, don't usually have credit cards, at least not normally. So, but they do get on social media a lot. So just because they're clicking on your ad doesn't necessarily mean that they're buying what you have to offer. They're just costing you money by giving you the most clicks. So what you want to do is you want to filter out the 18 to 21-year-olds and just focus on the other age ranges. And what that's going to do is it's going to drop how much you're spending in terms of like wasteful clicks. And it's also going to improve your metrics by raising your click-through rate and lowering your cost per click. So you basically need to analyze the genders and the age ranges, because sometimes maybe 65 and older they're just not clicking at all, so they're being served your ad but they're not clicking, and that's serving to raise your or lower your click-through rate. So you really need to take a good look at the demographics and figure out what's going on there and figure out who you need to zero in on, because the tighter you can get your demographic targeting, the better your ad's going to be. And the final thing is basically test a new audience. Eventually you're going to have tapped out the audience that you targeted, and you're going to want to continue to look for new people to serve your ad to. So, if you're selling a romance novel, instead of just targeting people who are into romance novels, maybe you want to target people who like to travel to romantic destinations, or you want to target people who are fans of, a specific type of movie or TV show, or you want to target people who are not currently in a relationship or something along those lines. That's stuff that you need to think about, and that's stuff that you need to try out. Because eventually what's going to happen is you're going to stumble upon an audience that is super responsive to what it is you have to offer them. And once you find that audience, you want to milk it for everything you can possibly get from it. And actually the best audiences for that, in my experience, are lookalike audiences. And that's basically an audience that Facebook targets for you based off of a list of people that you give Facebook. So for instance, if you have a Facebook fan page on Facebook that has over 1,000 followers, what you can do is you can go to Facebook and be like, hey, I want you to make a lookalike audience based off the people who followed my Facebook fan page. And so Facebook will go out and they'll look at the people who, liked your fan page, and they'll extrapolate 100,000, 200,000, a million people based off of similar interests to the people who've liked your fan page. So you're basically telling Facebook, hey, these are people that have proven to like me. Look at people who are just like them and serve my ad to them. And that's very powerful. You can also do this if you have an email list. So you can download your email list, upload it to Facebook, and say, find people like the people on my email list. And they'll go out and they'll find similar, people who have similar interests and similar likes and dislikes and stuff like that. And they'll return that to you as a lookalike audience, which you can then target in your advertising. And the lookalike audience is where you can really start to, get some good results with. I may need to make a whole video just based off of that alone, because I know it probably sounds confusing to you guys who aren't familiar with how audiences work in Facebook. But you don't need to worry about it right now. Just know that this is one of the things that you can do to further refine your audience down the road. All right, so that's been the presentation portion of this little tutorial. I'm sure some of you have questions or concerns, or you're just overwhelmed, or you're so thankful that you don't know how to express your gratitude to me for doing this. Yeah, right. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can send me a direct message on Facebook. Best way is probably to just leave a comment in this post, and I'll reply to it when I can. I'm here to help, share my experiences with people, and hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you guys have. Okay, so now that this portion of the tutorial is done, I'm just going to hop on over to my Facebook ad account real quick and show you a few little tricks that you can do to analyze your data. Hey everybody, okay, we are back here in my Facebook advertising account, and there may be some things blurred out in this video. I don't know yet until I get to post-production, but that's just because I might want to protect some of my personal data. So pay no attention if the screen should get blurry at certain points. But what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take you through one of my split test campaigns that I did, and I'm going to show you, just how you can go about analyzing the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the upper right corner, and I'm going to select the lifetime date range, just so I can get some decent data off of this. And you can see here that over the course of this campaign that I'm going to be talking about, we got some definite data here. And the long and short of this is basically, this is the first time that I broke out the women from my target audience and served an ad just to them to try to get an idea of, demographically, how they're going to respond to what it is I have to offer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that this campaign is selected, and we're in the campaigns tab right now. So down here, right beneath it, you have the option to view charts. And this is a really nifty little thing which can give you very quick access to the data that you want to have. But before we do that, I'm just going to show you real quick over here. If we go to the performance drop-down menu, the columns drop-down menu, right now performance is selected by default, but if we go down to performance and clicks and choose that, Facebook is going to give us a whole lot more data. And if you look at right here, it gives us the CTR. So you don't have to sit around and try to manually do math to figure out what your click-through rate is, what your cost per click is, and so on and so forth. So as you can see right here, for the campaign that we've selected, we had a total of 411 clicks with a click-through rate of 8.32%, which, pretty good. It's in that average range. Cost per click of around 24 cents, which again, good. We hit below 25 cents. We got close to 5,000 impressions, which is one of those benchmarks for statistical significance, as well as the number of clicks, which was twice as much as my statistical significance rule of thumb. Okay, so now that you know how to find your click-through rate and your cost per click and all that good stuff, we're going to go in and we're going to start looking at this data. So if we go over here and we choose View Charts, we're going to get this little window that kind of like, comes out from the side here. And up here, Facebook gives you performance, demographics, and placement. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But I want to show you down here, these were the results of my split test. So basically, I had this campaign geared only towards women, and I tested out 5 different audience demographics in terms of age. So we have the audience demographic of 18 to 24, we have the audience demographic of 25 to 34, the audience demographic of 35 to 44, the audience demographic of 45 to 54, and then 55 and over, okay? So ideally, we would have wanted to have 6 different things to test because this should have gone to 55 to 64, and then we should have had a 65 plus, but we only get 5 variations, so I just kind of grouped the older demographic into one thing. Now, if we look at this, over the course of this ad, the 18 to 24 demographic cost $1 per result, or in this case, per click. So it's costing me $1 to get clicks from women who are between the ages of 18 and 24. That number went up when we got to the demographic of women aged 25 to 34. So if you look here, it's $1.18 per click for 25 to 34-year-old women. But we see a significant drop in the 35 and over demographic at 59 cents, basically 60 cents, for women aged 35 to 54, and then around 40 cents to women age 55 and over. Now, based off of our rules of thumb, these are still pretty high cost per click, 60 cents, between 40 and 60 cents. But they're not prohibitively expensive, and this is just a starting point. This is telling me that without an optimized ad, this is what I can expect to see if I'm serving my ad to this demographic. Now, based off of this split test information alone, I know that women between the ages of 18 and 34 are going to be costing me a lot of money. So what I want to do is when I create my audience to serve my ad to regularly, I only want to target women aged 35 and up and eliminate these 2 age ranges because they're going to be, driving up my cost per click. So if we go back up here to the performance tab, you'll see this test got 154 link clicks. We reached 4,276 people, and I spent $100 on this test. Now, if we go to this demographics tab here, which is really telling, what we'll see is Facebook tells us, the different age ranges that we reached and how many link clicks these people provided. So we're not interested in the 13 to 17-year-old age group, obviously. But if we look at this kind of matches up with what we saw in the split test results. 18 to 24-year-olds were served the most in terms of audience reach at 978 impressions, right? But we only got 20 clicks off of them. So you can see just by the blue bar here, which is the number of clicks, it's so much smaller. It's about half the size of the green bar, which means that half the people who the ad was being served to were clicking on it. Well, not half, but like in the ratio of people who clicked on the ad, it was served to people disproportionately to the people who clicked on it. And the same is even more true for the 25 to 34-year-old. They were served close to 1,000 impressions of the ad, and only 17 of them clicked on it. And you can see based off of these 2 blue bars how disproportionate that is. So if you just look at this for your campaigns, If you have a disproportionate reach to clicks, that tells you that there's something about your ad that isn't resonating with, that demographic. So you're going to want to eventually cut those out. Now, if you look here at 35 to 44, it's pretty even in terms of the ratio of, impressions to clicks. And in 45 to 54, people are clicking on it more than it's being served to them, which, is pretty good. So like basically, even though the reach is still very high, we're getting a lot more engagement with our ad from the ad that's being served. And if we go all the way down to 65 plus, we can see here that it wasn't served all that much to this age group, but the people who saw it clicked at a disproportionately large ratio, which means that they were very responsive to this ad. So looking at this data right here, this tells me that my audience of the female gender tends to skew older, 35 and above. So going forward, I made the decision to filter out the female age bracket 18 to 34, okay? And only serve my ad to women who are over the age of 35. And this greatly improved my my audience refinement and my ad targeting. And it's been able to allow me to get my the ad that I've been serving to women down to around 10 cents a click, which is a big drop from that 40 to 60 cent range that this ad told me these people were clicking at. Finally, we have a placement readout here. Now, as you can see, the only data I have is for Facebook, but Facebook is the only thing I'm targeting because I only target my ads to the Facebook news feed. So if you're seeing stuff in the Audience Network, Instagram, and Messenger, chances are you haven't done a proper job of telling Facebook what you want your placement to be, okay? So I usually recommend ignoring these different placements. So if you're seeing data for these, you want to get rid of those, okay? Only focus on Facebook. And as you can see here, the blue bar is the amount of reach we got, and the green bar is the number of clicks we got. And the blue bar just barely scrapes out the ratio to the green bar, which means that this was a pretty good test, okay? Because we got almost even, reach to click ratio, which is very good. So ideally, you'd want to see this green bar be higher than the blue bar, but that rarely happens. And we got to deal with data as it's presented to us. So this is all ways in which you can get data to analyze, what it is or, how your ads are doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial. I hope it wasn't too confusing for you. Like I said before, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. This is Matt. I'll catch you guys later.